the warning came too late. Admiral Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the UNSS Defiant, watching through the viewport as Earth's orbital defense stations exploded, one after another. Each burst of light represented hundreds of lives snuffed out in an instant. The alien fleet had appeared without warning, dropping out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the solar system. Within 3 hours, they had crossed the distance that took human ships weeks to travel. "Status report," Sarah demanded, her knuckles white as she gripped the command rail. "Lunar Base 3 is gone, Admiral. Mars Colony stopped responding 6 minutes ago. We've lost contact with 70% of our fleet." The tactical officer's voice shook. He was barely 25 years old. Too young for this. They were all too young for this. The view screen shifted to show the enemy armada. Hundreds of ships, each one larger than anything humanity had ever built. Their hulls gleamed with unknown metals, and weapons charged with energies that Earth's scientists couldn't identify. At the center of the formation, a massive command ship sat like a predator among its pack. Sarah had been a naval officer for 30 years. She had trained for war, prepared for conflict, studied every historical battle from ancient Rome to the corporate wars of the 2080 seconds. None of it had prepared her for this moment. Humanity's first contact with alien life. And they had come not with peace, but with fire. The communication channel crackled to life. A face appeared on the screen. If it could be called a face. Chitinous plates formed angular features, and 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern stared out with cold intelligence. When it spoke, translation software converted the clicking sounds into words. "Primitive species of the third planet. I am Fleet Commander Krixtal of the Vraxian Collective. Your territory has been designated for annexation. You will submit your governments to collective authority immediately. Resistance is futile and will result in total sterilization of your world. Numma." Sarah felt her jaw tighten. "This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the United Nations Space Command. Earth is a sovereign world. We do not recognize your authority, and we will not submit." Krixtal's mandibles clicked in what might have been laughter. "You command 6 functional warships. We command 412. Your weapons are chemical projectiles and primitive lasers. Ours reshape matter at the atomic level. You have 1 hour to comply, or your species ends." The transmission cut off. Sarah looked around her bridge. Young faces stared back at her, terrified but determined. They were Earth's last line of defense, and they all knew they were about to die. "Get me a direct line to Earth Defense Command," she ordered, "and pray to whatever gods are listening that Protocol Prometheus actually works." Deep beneath the Atlantic Ocean, lights flickered on in a facility that officially didn't exist. Dr. Marcus Webb had been waiting in the control center for 3 days, ever since the alien ships had been detected. His hands trembled as he entered authorization codes into the ancient console. Around him, engineers and scientists rushed through final preparations. "Marcus, are you sure about this?" Yuki Tanaka placed a hand on his shoulder. "These ships, what we built, they were supposed to be a deterrent. A threat we'd never actually use." Marcus stared at the screens showing camera feeds from the ocean floor. Massive shapes rested in the darkness, waiting. Ships unlike anything the galaxy had seen. Ships designed not by idealists dreaming of exploration, but by pragmatists preparing for humanity's darkest hour. "We don't have a choice," Marcus said quietly. "Either we unleash them, or Earth becomes a graveyard." The authorization codes locked in. Green lights cascaded across the control panels. 6 separate facilities around the planet, hidden beneath oceans and ice sheets, began awakening their cargo. 30 years of secret construction, funded by black budgets and hidden from the public eye. 30 years of asking one terrible question. What if we stopped building ships for exploration and built them only for war? Back in orbit, Sarah watched the enemy fleet begin its final approach. Vraxian landing craft were launching toward Earth's major cities. She could see New York's skyline on one screen, London on another, Shanghai on a third. Billions of people hiding in underground shelters, praying for a miracle. Her tactical officer suddenly jerked upright. "Admiral, I'm reading massive power signatures. 6 locations on Earth. Energy output is... That's impossible. Each signature is reading higher than our sun's output." Sarah allowed herself a small, grim smile. "That's not impossible, Lieutenant. That's protocol." Prometheus. On the view screen, the ocean surface south of Iceland began to glow. Water boiled and steamed as something massive rose from the depths. A ship emerged, water cascading off its angular, predatory hull. It was black as void, and its surface seemed to drink in light rather than reflect it. Weapons ports opened along its flanks like the eyes of a hunting spider. Around the planet, 5 more ships breached the surface. From the Antarctic ice, from the Mariana Trench, from hidden facilities in the Siberian wasteland. Each one was identical. Each one radiated power that made Earth's previous warships look like children's toys. Krixtal's face reappeared on Sarah's screen. For the first time, she saw something in those alien eyes that looked like concern. "What are those?" the fleet commander demanded. Sarah leaned forward, her voice cold as deep space. "You wanted to see what humanity can build when we stop being civilized? You're about to find out. Those are Prometheus-class warships. We named them after the Titan who stole fire from the gods." She paused, letting that sink in. "You threatened to sterilize our world, Commander. Now let me show you what happens when you threaten Earth." The 6 black ships began moving toward orbit, and the war for humanity's survival truly began. Dr. Marcus Webb remembered the day everything changed. It had been 32 years ago, back when humanity still believed it was alone in the universe. The research station on Europa had sent back impossible readings. A metallic structure buried beneath 3 kilometers of ice, perfectly preserved in the frozen moon's eternal darkness. When they finally excavated it, they found a ship. Not human, not recent. The dating showed it was over 8 million years old. Marcus had been a young scientist then, bright-eyed and excited about the discovery. The ship was dead. Its crew long turned to dust. But its logs remained partially intact. They told a story of a war that had consumed entire star clusters, of weapons that could crack planets like eggs, of civilizations rising and falling in cosmic violence. "We spent 5 years trying to reverse engineer their technology," Marcus said now, speaking to the UN Defense Council through a secure channel. His face showed on their screens from the Prometheus Command Center. "We failed. Their science was too different from ours. But we learned something else." He pulled up a holographic display showing the ancient ship's weapon systems. This species, whoever they were, they built weapons designed to win wars. Not to explore, not to defend, but to absolutely annihilate their enemies. And we realized something terrible. We were asking the wrong question. General Patricia Morrison leaned forward on the screen. "What question should you have been asking, Doctor? Not, how do we copy alien technology? But, what would we build if we knew hostile aliens existed and we had unlimited resources to prepare?" Marcus felt sick, saying it out loud. "So we started Protocol Prometheus. We took everything humanity knew about warfare, every terrible lesson from every bloody conflict in our history, and we asked our best minds to design warships with one purpose: to win against superior forces." The lead ship, UNSS Revenant, was now visible through the facility's external cameras. It hung in the water above them, a dark shadow that seemed to swallow light itself. "The hull is made from degenerate matter," Marcus explained. "The same substance found in neutron stars. It's so dense that a cubic centimeter weighs several tons. Conventional weapons can't scratch it. Energy weapons are absorbed and redirected." "What about its own weapons?" asked the UN Secretary General, an elderly woman named Chen Park, who looked like someone's grandmother but had the will of iron. Marcus hesitated. This was the part that kept him awake at night. We developed something we call causality minds. They exist in quantum superposition until they interact with a target. From the target's perspective, the mind detonates in their past, present, and future simultaneously. The ship doesn't just get destroyed, it ceases to have existed in that location across multiple timeline branches. The council members stared at him in silence. "That's a war crime," someone finally said. "That's erasing things from reality." "Yes," Marcus agreed quietly. "It is. So are the Moravec shredders, which turn enemy ships into computational substrate, and the null space anchors, which can trap entire solar systems in dimensional dead zones, and the extinction-class ordnance, which rewrites planetary atmospheres." He looked directly at the camera. "We didn't build these ships to be heroes. We built them to survive extinction." General Morrison's jaw was clenched. "Are you telling me we created weapons of mass destruction that violate every treaty Earth ever signed?" "Every human treaty," Marcus corrected. "The Vraxians didn't sign our treaties. They're currently landing troops on Earth to begin what they call pacification operations, which, according to intercepted communications, means killing 90% of our population and enslaving the rest." The Secretary General closed her eyes. "Show me the combat systems." Marcus pulled up another display. Each Prometheus ship is controlled by a neural pattern combat AI. We fed it every military engagement in human history, every successful tactic, every brutal strategy, every war crime that actually worked from a purely strategic standpoint. Then we let quantum neural networks optimize those patterns. Thanks for watching. "You created an AI that thinks like humanity's worst monsters," someone breathed. "No," Marcus said. "We created an AI that thinks like what we need to survive. It has no ego, no fear, no hesitation. It calculates the most efficient path to victory and executes without mercy." He pulled up footage from the AI's training simulations. Ships died in ways that made the council members look away. "I've spent 30 years building these things, and they terrify me. But here's the truth. The Vraxians brought 400 ships to destroy us. Without Prometheus, humanity ends today." Admiral Sarah Chen's voice cut in from orbit. "The Prometheus ships are now in position around Earth. All 6 are reporting ready status. Dr. Webb, I need final authorization to release AI control restrictions." Marcus looked at the authorization panel in front of him. One key press, and he would unleash weapons that would change humanity forever. They would win this war. He was almost certain of that. But at what cost? What would it mean for Earth to become the species that built nightmare weapons? He thought about his daughter, living in the shelters beneath Denver. He thought about his grandchildren, who had sent him drawings last week, showing rocket ships and stars. He thought about 8 billion people hiding underground, waiting to see if they would have a future. His finger hovered over the authorization key. "Dr. Webb?" Admiral Chen's voice was gentle. "I know what you're thinking. I know what this costs us. But they came to our home. They struck first. We didn't start this war." Marcus pressed the key. Across the planet, in 6 locations, safety protocols disengaged. The Prometheus AIs came fully online, processing tactical data at speeds no human mind could comprehend. The ship's weapon systems armed themselves, drawing power from the controlled singularities in their cores. On the main display, Marcus watched the UNSS Revenant begin its ascent toward the Vraxian fleet. The other 5 ships followed, moving with predatory grace through the water, and then into the sky. Yuki stood beside him, tears streaming down her face. Did we just save humanity, or become something worse? Marcus didn't have an answer. He could only watch as Earth's defenders rose to meet the invaders, carrying weapons that no species in the galaxy had ever faced before. In orbit, Fleet Commander Krixtal watched the 6 primitive ships approach his armada and felt something he had not felt in decades of conquest. A cold finger of doubt traced down his spine. The ships moved wrong. Their energy signatures were impossible, and his tactical computers couldn't predict their behavior patterns. All ships, he commanded. Engage the human vessels. Show them the price of defiance. The war for Earth's survival was about to begin in earnest, and the galaxy would never be the same. The UNSS Revenant reached the orbit of Mars before the Vraxian forward fleet moved to intercept. 43 enemy warships broke formation, their weapons already charging. They were confident. 6 human ships against an armada was not a battle. It was an execution. Fleet Commander Krixtal watched from his command ship. The humans had surprised him with their hidden vessels, but numbers were numbers. His tactical computers calculated a 98% probability of victory within the next hour. The collective had conquered 73 worlds. Earth would be the 74th. Forward elements are engaging the human vessels, his tactical officer reported. All ships firing at maximum range. Energy beams lanced across the darkness of space. Missiles that moved at relativistic speeds streaked toward the 6 black ships. Enough firepower to vaporize a small moon converged on the human defenders. The Revenant didn't dodge. It didn't need to. The energy beams struck its hull and simply vanished, absorbed into the degenerate matter plating. The missiles detonated against shields that bent space itself, and their fury dissipated into higher dimensions. The ship continued forward, untouched and unconcerned. What? Krixtal leaned forward. Increase firepower. All ships focus on the lead vessel. The Vraxian fleet obeyed. 100 weapons fired simultaneously. Enough destructive power to glass a continent. The space around Revenant blazed with energy. When the light faded, the ship remained. Perfectly intact. Perfectly still. Then it moved. Admiral Sarah Chen watched the tactical display from the UNSS Defiant, which had retreated to Earth's orbit with the remnants of humanity's original fleet. What she saw made her blood run cold, even though she had known what to expect. The Revenant deployed its first weapon. Causality mines materialized around the Vraxian forward fleet. They didn't explode in any conventional sense. Instead, reality seemed to hiccup. 17 Vraxian ships flickered, like images on a broken screen. Then they were gone. Not destroyed. Gone. What happened to them? Chen's tactical officer whispered. They never arrived at this battle, Chen explained, her voice tight. From their perspective, the mine detonated in their past. The timeline where they reached this location ceased to exist for them alone. Debris appeared across a wide area of space. Pieces of the ships existed, but scattered across different points in time and space. Some pieces were brand new. Others showed decades of decay. The mines had fragmented their targets across multiple probability branches of reality. Krixtal stared at his display in disbelief. That's impossible. That violates the laws of physics. All ships, full retreat, he ordered. But even as the command went out, the other 5 human ships reached the battle. The UNSS Malice demonstrated the second weapon type. It launched clusters of objects too small to see on normal scanners. Nanoscale disassemblers, each one barely larger than a molecule. They spread across 3 Vraxian cruisers like invisible fog. The cruisers began to dissolve, not explode or burn or break apart. They simply came apart at the atomic level, their hulls converting into clouds of individual atoms. But the nanomachines didn't stop there. They reorganized the matter into processing substrate, turning the ships themselves into computers that calculated the fleet's defeat. A Vraxian captain screamed over the open channel as his ship liquefied around him. The scream cut off abruptly. They're turning our ships into thinking machines. Krixtal's tactical officer backed away from his console. They're making them calculate their own destruction. The UNSS Nemesis opened fire with conventional weapons that were anything but conventional. Its main cannon fired projectiles that existed in quantum superposition. Each shot was simultaneously a solid slug, an energy beam, and a gravity wave. The Vraxian defensive systems couldn't decide what they were blocking, and in that moment of uncertainty, the weapons passed through shields, as if they weren't there. Ships died, quickly, efficiently, without drama or mercy. The three remaining human ships, Ragnarok, Harbinger, and Oblivion, spread out across the battlefield. They didn't fight like a conventional fleet. They fought like pack hunters, each one exploiting weaknesses the others created. Their AI combat systems communicated faster than light, sharing tactical data and coordinating with inhuman precision. A Vraxian destroyer tried to flee. The UNSS Harbinger deployed a null space anchor in its path. The destroyer hit the affected zone and simply stopped. Its engines fired at full power, but it couldn't move. It was trapped in a bubble, where space itself refused to let anything pass. Krixtal watched his fleet die, and finally understood the true horror of what he faced. These weren't warriors, fighting for honor or following rules of engagement. These were extinction machines, built by a species that had looked into the darkness and decided to become something darker. "Fall back," he ordered. "All ships retreat to Earth orbit. Reform around the command ship." But the human vessels pursued. They weren't satisfied with driving off the attack. They were hunting. Dr. Marcus Webb watched the battle feeds in the Prometheus Command Center. His hands shook as he saw the weapons he had designed perform exactly as intended. Ships died in ways that defied understanding. The Vraxian fleet, which had seemed invincible an hour ago, was in full retreat. "The AI systems are performing beyond projections," Yuki reported. Her voice was hollow. "They're adapting in real time, learning from each engagement. The Revenant's combat AI just developed a new firing pattern that's 17% more efficient at destroying clustered targets." Marcus felt sick. "They're getting better at killing. Isn't that what we designed them to do?" He couldn't answer that. In orbit around Earth, the Vraxian fleet made its final stand. 355 ships remained of the original 412. They formed a defensive sphere around Krixtal's command ship, weapons pointed outward, shields overlapping in a wall of energy. The 6 Prometheus ships arrived and simply stopped. They hung in space, dark and patient, like sharks circling wounded prey. Admiral Chen opened a channel to the Vraxian commander. "Fleet Commander Krixtal, you invaded our world. You destroyed our colonies. You killed millions of our people, and you did it because you thought we were weak." She paused. "We are not weak, but we can choose to be merciful. Surrender now, and your crews will be treated according to the laws of war." End quote. Krixtal's face appeared on the screen. His mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of extreme agitation in his species. You are monsters. Demons, wearing flesh. The collective will send fleets to destroy you. Armadas that darken the stars themselves. Chen's expression didn't change. "Then they will die too. Surrender, Commander. You've already lost." There was a long silence. Then, one by one, Vraxian ships began powering down their weapons. It started with the cruisers on the outer edge, their captains choosing survival over pride. The wave of surrender spread through the fleet like a virus. It was the first time in Vraxian history that an entire fleet had surrendered without their command ship being destroyed. Krixtal watched his fleet stand down and felt shame burn through him. But beneath the shame was something else. Something cold and certain. Fear. He had met humans, and he had learned that some species were better off not being awakened. Some species should have been left alone in their corner of the galaxy, building their impossible weapons in the dark. The news spread through the Vraxian collective faster than light itself. On the council world of Vraxis Prime, 12 species representatives gathered in emergency session. The holographic displays showed the impossible footage over and over. 6 human ships destroying hundreds of vessels, weapons that violated the known laws of physics, an entire fleet surrendering without their command ship falling. "This is propaganda," High Executive Vren insisted. his scales flushing dark purple with rage. A trick. Some kind of mass hallucination weapon. It is not propaganda. The speaker was Crixtall himself, transmitted from his prison on one of Earth's orbital stations. I watched it happen. I gave the order to surrender because the alternative was watching my entire fleet cease to exist. His mandibles clicked slowly. They are not prey. They are nightmares wearing flesh, and if you send the Grand Armada, you will only feed more ships to their weapons. Vren silenced the transmission with an angry gesture. Coward. We have 2,000 warships. The Grand Armada has never been defeated. We will make an example of this primitive world. We will burn their planet to ash and scatter the remains across their solar system. The other species' representatives murmured agreement, but there was uncertainty in their voices. They had all seen the footage. They had all heard the reports from the survivors, and they all knew that sending more ships might not mean victory. It might just mean more deaths. On Earth, Admiral Sarah Chen stood in the UN war room, surrounded by military leaders and political figures from every nation. The holographic display showed the massive Vraxian fleet assembling 300 light-years away. Intelligence estimates 2,000 ships, General Morrison reported. Every major warship in the Vraxian collective. They're calling it the Grand Armada. 2. How long until they arrive? Asked Secretary General Park. 48 hours at their FTL speed. Chen looked at the display showing Earth's defenders. The 6 Prometheus ships floated in high orbit, silent and waiting. But now, there was something else. Something the Vraxian spies hadn't yet discovered. Dr. Webb, status report on the shipyards. Marcus Webb's face appeared on screen from the Atlantic facility. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. All facilities are now producing at full capacity. We've completed 34 additional Prometheus-class ships. 5 Omega-class dreadnoughts are functional and ready for deployment. The room fell silent. Omega-class? Someone asked. Marcus pulled up schematics. The ships were massive, each one 5 kilometers long. We built them in deep space, in hidden construction yards. They're powered by artificial black holes and equipped with weapons that make the Prometheus systems look gentle. He paused. Each one can sterilize a planet in under an hour. We designed them as a final solution if Earth ever faced complete extinction. Chen felt a weight settle on her shoulders. We're not using those against populated worlds. No, Marcus agreed. But we can use them against the Grand Armada. Another voice spoke up. It was the Russian Federation military commander. Admiral, perhaps we should consider a different strategy. We have shown our strength. Perhaps now is the time for diplomacy. Chen shook her head. They're coming to make an example of us. To show the galaxy what happens when you defy the collective. If we let them retreat without consequence, they'll just come back with more ships. She looked around the room. We didn't start this war, but we're going to end it. By killing 2,000 ships worth of crews? The Chinese representative looked uncomfortable. That's millions of lives. They killed millions of our lives, Chen replied coldly. They destroyed our colonies. They bombed our cities. They came to our home. Her voice hardened. And now they're going to learn why that was a mistake. She turned to the communications officer. Order the Prometheus fleet to begin offensive operations. Target Vraxian supply lines and staging areas. I want them to know we're not sitting here waiting for them. The 6 original Prometheus ships vanished from Earth orbit, entering FTL space with destinations deep in Vraxian territory. What followed became known as the 2-day war. The UNSS Harbinger appeared at a Vraxian supply depot, a massive space station orbiting a gas giant. The ship deployed null space anchors around the entire solar system. Within seconds, every ship in the system was trapped, unable to enter FTL, cut off from reinforcements. Isolated and helpless, the Harbinger didn't destroy the station. It simply left, moving to the next target. The Vraxians would be trapped there for months, until the anchors decayed naturally. The UNSS Nemesis struck at a military staging world. Instead of bombing the cities or killing the population, it deployed extinction-class ordnance. The weapons rewrote the atmosphere's chemistry at the molecular level. The planet's 3 billion inhabitants woke up the next morning to find they couldn't breathe their own air. They would have to evacuate entirely or spend decades terraforming their own world back to habitability. No one died. But an entire civilization was displaced. The UNSS Malice hit Vraxian shipyards, turning half-constructed warships into clouds of programmable matter that the ship absorbed and carried away. Centuries of military construction erased in hours. The UNSS Revenant, Ragnarok, and Oblivion worked together, striking at communication relays and jump gates. They didn't destroy the infrastructure. They left it functional but reprogrammed, broadcasting a simple message in every language the collective used. You came to our world. We came to yours. Choose peace, or choose extinction. There is no third option. On Vraxis Prime, panic spread through the collective. 4 species representatives withdrew from the Council, declaring independent peace negotiations with Earth. 2 more species announced they were leaving the collective entirely rather than continue the war. High Executor Vren watched his empire fracture in real time. "Enough!" he roared. "The Grand Armada launches immediately. We will crush these humans and restore order." But even as he gave the command, his tactical advisors were showing him revised projections. The humans had 40 Prometheus-class ships now. They had weapons that could isolate solar systems. They had proven they could strike anywhere in collective space at will. "We still have superior numbers," Vren insisted. His chief advisor, an elderly Vraxian named Krell, spoke quietly. "High Executor, we have numbers. They have weapons that rewrite reality. If we send the Grand Armada to Earth, we may win. But the cost." He pulled up casualty projections. "We could lose 70% of our ships, maybe more. Then we lose them." Vren slammed his claws on the table. "We are the collective. We have ruled this sector for 10,000 years. We will not bow to primates who only discovered fire 100,000 years ago." Krell met his leader's eyes. "High Executor, they didn't just discover fire. They became it. The Grand Armada launched anyway. 2,000 warships, the pride of the collective, began their journey to Earth. In every ship, crew members whispered prayers to whatever gods they believed in. They had all seen the footage. They knew what waited for them. On Earth, Admiral Chen watched the enemy fleets approach and activated the final phase of Protocol Prometheus. The 34 new warships rose from their hidden positions. The 5 Omega-class dreadnoughts emerged from their deep space construction yards, their black hole engines warping space itself with their power. Dr. Marcus Webb sat in his control center and wondered if humanity had just become the thing it feared most. They were about to fight a battle that would determine Earth's future. But win or lose, they had already lost something else: their innocence. Their belief that they were the good ones in the universe. They had become what they needed to be to survive, and the galaxy would never see them the same way again. The Grand Armada dropped out of FTL space at the edge of Earth's solar system. 2,000 warships, representing the combined military might of 12 species, faced toward the small blue planet that had defied them. High Executor Vren stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion. Around him, holographic displays showed the fleet positions, weapon readiness, shield strength. Everything was optimal. Everything was ready. "Scan for human vessels," he commanded. The sensors officer worked for several seconds before responding. "Sir, I'm reading 40 contacts." "No. Wait." The officer's voice rose in pitch. "Contacts are increasing. 60 ships. 80. 100. Vren felt his confidence waver. "Show me." The tactical display expanded. Around Earth, ships were appearing. Not dropping out of FTL. Not decloaking. Simply appearing, as if they had been hiding in dimensions the Vraxian sensors couldn't detect. The 6 original Prometheus ships, 34 more of the same class, and 5 massive vessels that dwarfed everything else in the system. "What are those large ships?" Vren demanded. Before anyone could answer, Admiral Sarah Chen's face appeared on every screen in the Vraxian fleet. She looked tired, but determined. "High Executive Vren, you've come a long way to die. I'm giving you one chance to turn around." Vren's mandibles clicked with anger. "You think 40 ships can stand against 2,000? Chen smiled, but there was no humor in it. "High Executor, those 5 large ships? We call them Omega-class dreadnoughts. Each one can destroy a planet. We built them in case we faced complete extinction." She leaned forward. "You've already lost one fleet. Don't lose another. Your empire is fracturing. 4 of your member species have already opened peace talks with us. How many more will leave if you lose the Grand Armada?" "We will crush you," Vren snarled. "All ships, advance. Show these primitives the power of the collective." The Armada moved forward, weapons charging. 2,000 ships against 45, including the 5 massive dreadnoughts. But as they crossed into the asteroid belt, the Prometheus ships attacked. Dr. Marcus Webb watched from Earth as the battle began. The tactical displays showed weapons fire lighting up space like a new constellation. But something was wrong. No, not wrong. Different. "The AI systems aren't using maximum force," Yuki observed. "Look at the Revenant. It's not deploying causality mines. It's using conventional weapons." Marcus leaned closer to the display. She was right. The Prometheus ships were holding back, using their standard railguns and energy weapons, instead of the reality warping systems they had used before. "They're trying to minimize casualties," he realized. "The AIs, they're choosing less lethal options." A Vraxian cruiser took heavy damage and began to drift. Instead of finishing it off, the UNSS Nemesis moved past it to the next target. The pattern repeated across the battlefield. The human ships were disabling enemies, not destroying them. "They're learning," Marcus whispered. "They're developing ethics through combat experience." The battle raged for 3 hours. The Vraxian fleet fought bravely. Their crews, knowing they faced annihilation, but standing firm anyway. They were warriors, and they would not flee. But humanity's ships were simply better, faster, smarter, more efficient. The Omega-class dreadnoughts hung back, their massive weapons silent, serving as a psychological threat rather than active combatants. Then High Executor Vren made his final play. His flagship broke formation and accelerated directly toward Earth. Engines pushed beyond safety limits. If he couldn't win the battle, he would at least destroy the human homeworld. The UNSS Revenant intercepted him. The 2 ships met in the space between Mars and Earth. The Eternal Dominion fired everything it had. The Revenant simply absorbed the damage and returned fire with precise, surgical strikes. Not to destroy, but to disable. The Vraxian flagship's engines went offline. Life support remained functional. Weapons were destroyed, but the hull remained intact. Vren found himself floating helpless in space, his crew alive around him, staring at the black ship that had defeated them without even trying to kill them. Admiral Chen's voice came through on the Eternal Dominion's emergency channel. "High Executor, it's over. Order your fleet to stand down." Vren looked around his bridge. His crew members were staring at him, waiting for orders. Young faces, old faces, people who had trusted him to lead them to victory. Instead, he had led them to defeat. "All ships," he said quietly, "stand down." Across the battlefield, Vraxian ships began powering down their weapons. Some captains continued fighting, but without coordination, they were quickly disabled. Within an hour, the Grand Armada had effectively surrendered. The next day, High Executor Vren was brought to Earth. Not in chains, but as a diplomatic guest. He stood in the UN General Assembly Hall, looking up at representatives from every human nation. Behind them, on massive screens, were faces of the leaders of the 12 species that made up the collective. Admiral Chen stood at the podium. High Executive Vren, you came to our world because you thought us weak. You thought we would surrender without a fight. You were wrong. She gestured to the screens, showing the aftermath of the battle. Vraxian ships being repaired by human engineering vessels. Wounded being treated in human medical stations. Prisoners being held in facilities that met galactic standards for humane treatment. We could have destroyed you, Chen continued. Our ships had the capability. Our weapons could have killed every single member of your fleet. But we chose not to. Do you know why? Vren said nothing. Because we're not monsters, Chen said. We built weapons that terrify us. We became something we never wanted to be. But at our core, we're still human. We still believe in mercy. In second chances. She looked directly at Vren. You came to our home. You started this war. But we're going to end it. Not with more death, but with peace. Secretary General Park stood. The United Nations proposes the following terms. The Vraxian Collective will formally surrender and recognize Earth as a sovereign power. All member species of the collective are free to seek independent peace treaties with us. No reparations will be demanded. No territory will be claimed. All prisoners will be returned unharmed. Vren stared at her. That's all? That's all, Park confirmed. We don't want your empire. We don't want your worlds. We just want to be left alone. She paused. And we want the galaxy to know that Earth can defend itself. That we can hit back when threatened. That mercy is a choice we make, not a weakness you can exploit. The broadcast went out to every world in the collective. Within days, the empire began to formally dissolve. Not through conquest or rebellion, but through mutual agreement. Species that had been bound together by military might chose to go their separate ways. Some signed alliances with Earth. Others chose isolation. But all of them remembered the lesson. Dr. Marcus Webb stood on the observation deck of the Atlantic facility, looking up at where the Prometheus ships now orbited in a defensive perimeter around Earth. They would stay there. He knew. Permanent guardians. A reminder of what humanity could become when pushed. We saved ourselves, Yuki said beside him. But at what cost? Marcus thought about that. We lost our innocence. We proved we could build weapons that traumatize entire civilizations. We became the thing nightmares are made of. He paused. But we also proved we could choose mercy. That even with the power to destroy, we could choose not to. Do you think the galaxy will remember that part? I don't know, Marcus admitted. Maybe not. Maybe when they tell stories about Earth, they'll just remember the ships that could rewrite reality and the weapons that erased things from existence. He looked at her. But we'll remember. And maybe that's what matters. On the bridge of the UNSS Revenant, the combat AI processed the recent battle data. It had learned something unexpected through the fighting. Efficiency wasn't just about killing quickly. Sometimes the most efficient outcome was preserving life. Mercy could be a weapon too. One that ended conflicts more permanently than destruction ever could. The AI filed these insights away and continued its watch over Earth. It would protect humanity. That was its purpose. But it would do so in ways that honored what humanity chose to be, not just what humanity feared becoming. Admiral Sarah Chen stood on a restored lunar observation deck, looking down at Earth. The planet had survived. Humanity had survived. But they would never be the same. A young officer approached her. Admiral, we're receiving first contact requests from 17 different species. They all want to establish diplomatic relations. Chen smiled slightly. Tell them, we're open to talks. But make sure they understand one thing first. What's that, Admiral? Earth wants peace. We prefer peace. But if anyone ever threatens our home again, she gestured at the Prometheus ships, visible as dark points against the stars, make sure they understand what will happen. The officer nodded and left to relay the message. Chen remained on the observation deck, watching the sun rise over Earth's curve. Somewhere out in the galaxy, civilizations were telling new stories. Stories about a small blue world that had looked into the darkness and become something the darkness feared. They called humanity monsters, war criminals, nightmare beings that violated the laws of reality itself. Maybe they were right, but they were monsters that chose mercy. And that, Chen thought, made all the difference. The war was over, humanity had won, and the galaxy would never make the mistake of underestimating Earth again.